You spend your whole life trying to be enough for people, for places, for titles, for attention, for love. You shape yourself like clay in their hands, hoping the next version of you gets it right. The version that smiles more, that gives more, that tries harder, that forgives faster. And yet somehow you still lose, still feel empty, still feel invisible. And deep down you start to suspect something that you're too afraid to say out loud. Maybe the more you care, the more power they have over you. Maybe the truth is you were never weak. You were just taught to believe that strength comes from holding on, when in reality power begins the moment you learn to let go. Machiavelli didn't whisper this truth. He screamed it, not through words of comfort, but through strategies that cut like knives, because he understood something most people never will. That indifference, when deliberate, is not coldness, it's control. And if you want to stop being everyone's emotional puppet, if you want to stop dancing every time someone tugs in the strings of your guilt, your pride, your need for approval, then you have to learn the art of not caring. Not apathy, not laziness, but the radical ability to detach yourself from the emotional traps others use to manipulate you. Most people don't even realize they've been conditioned this way. They believe caring is the moral path, that emotional involvement is a sign of empathy. But when you look deeper, you'll see what Machiavelli saw. Caring too much makes you predictable, and predictable people are easy to control. Look at how easily someone can ruin your day. One sentence, one gesture, one ignored message. You could be having a perfectly decent morning, but one person's cold tone suddenly makes you question your worth. You spiral, not because they're powerful, but because you gave them power. You handed them their remote control to your emotions and you didn't even notice. That's the trap, the silent trap. Machiavelli warned rulers not to rely on love because love is conditional. It's soft. It's fragile, but fear, detachment, those are sturdier foundations. And while we're not talking about ruling nations here, we are talking about ruling your life, your mind, your emotional state. And to do that, you need to cut the strings that everyone pulls to keep you dancing for their approval. Ask yourself, what do you care too much about? Be honest, is it how people see you? Whether they think you're kind, smart, attractive, successful? Is it what your family expects of you? Is it a friend who only calls when they need something and yet you keep hoping they'll show up for you one day? Is it your partner's silence that keeps you awake at night wondering what you did wrong? Now ask, how much of your energy is going to things that don't feed you but drain you? Because here's the secret most people won't admit. Caring is expensive emotionally, mentally, physically, and you only have so much energy in a day. So the more you spend caring about people who wouldn't lose sleep over you, the less you have left for the things that actually matter. You want to be free, then stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even give you a bandage. Machiavelli understood that control isn't about being loud or violent. It's about mastering your own reactions. If you flinch at every insult, you're not in control. If you argue every time someone disrespects you, you're still playing their game. The real power is when someone tries to provoke you and you give them nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just silence, stillness, the kind of indifference that confuses them, that forces them to look at themselves instead of getting to use you as a mirror for their own insecurity. But this isn't just about staying silent. This is about a deeper rewiring, a complete shift in how you see the world. You have to stop expecting fairness from people who don't even know how to spell the word. You have to stop expecting closure from people who benefited from keeping you confused. You have to stop expecting respect from those who can't even respect themselves. And most of all, you have to stop expecting yourself to keep showing up for people who left you standing in the rain. There's this lie we're all fed growing up that caring makes you human. But Machiavelli knew something far more useful. Caring selectively makes you powerful. Because when you only care about what truly matters, your time, your values, your mission, you become untouchable. Not because you're numb, but because you're focused. The moment you stop chasing everyone's validation is the moment you start to command attention. Not because you demand it, but because detachment makes people uncomfortable. They don't know what to do when they can't predict you, when they can't guilt you, when they can't bait you into proving your worth. And here's the twist. They'll start chasing yours. You ever wonder why some people are so magnetic even when they don't say much? It's because they've stopped broadcasting need. Need for attention, need for reassurance, need for belonging. And in that silence, people project strength, mystery, authority. And that's when the power dynamic shifts. But you can't fake this. The moment you're doing it to get a reaction, you're still caring. You're still playing. The real shift happens when you truly internalize this. Not everything deserves your energy. Not everyone deserves a reaction. And sometimes the best way to win is to stop showing up to battles that were never worth fighting. The world will call you cold, let them. The world will say you've changed. Say thank you. The world will try to guilt you for not being who you used to be. Someone who bent over backward. Someone who said yes when they meant no. Someone who tolerated disrespect in the name of keeping the peace. But you're not here to keep the peace. You're here to keep your power. Stop measuring your worth by how much you sacrifice. Stop thinking that your ability to endure pain is proof of your goodness. It's not. It's proof that you are willing to abandon yourself for the sake of others. And that's not noble, that's self-destruction dressed as virtue. Machiavelli didn't write his principles for people who wanted to be liked. He wrote them for people who wanted to survive, to thrive, to lead. And if you're tired of being everyone's emotional punching bag, if you're done with being haunted by things that should have never had access to you in the first place, then you need to ask yourself one thing. Who benefits from your caring? Because if the answer isn't you, then it's time to stop. Most people won't tell you this because they don't want you to see it, but your sensitivity, your compassion, your willingness to forgive, they're not always seen as virtues. In the wrong hands, they're ammunition, and the more you care, the easier it is for people to aim that ammunition right at your peace. They don't need to shout at you. They just need to hint that they're disappointed. They don't need to argue. They just need to withdraw a little love. And you'll start bending, apologizing for things you didn't do, explaining yourself to people who already made up their mind. You'll become smaller and smaller just to be accepted by people who never saw you clearly to begin with. And the worst part, you'll call it loyalty. But Machiavelli would call it madness. He would call it a waste of energy, a forfeiting of power. Because every time you react, every time you over-explain, every time you try to fix something that's meant to be broken, you're feeding the illusion that other people's perception is more important than your own truth. You want to regain control? Then stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Let them talk. Let them twist your silence into stories. Let them create whatever version of you helps them sleep at night. The real power isn't in clearing your name. It's in not caring when they dirty it. This isn't about becoming cruel. It's about becoming immune. You've been trained to believe that being affected is a sign of your humanity, but Machiavelli would argue it's a sign of your programming, a code written by others. And if you don't rewrite that code, you'll spend your life reacting to a system that was never designed for your peace. Start noticing what gets a rise out of you, what makes your stomach tighten, what keeps you awake at night. These aren't random thoughts. They're coordinates. They show you where your chains are, and once you know that, you can start breaking them. Let's take an example. Say someone ghosts you. No explanation, no closure, just silence. Most people will go crazy trying to figure out what went wrong. They'll replay every conversation, blame themselves, lose sleep over someone who didn't even have the decency to say goodbye. But that reaction, that spiraling, it's not about the person. It's about the attachment to a version of yourself that was accepted. The fear that maybe if someone disappears, it means you're not enough. That's the real trap. You've equated being cared for with being worthy. And so when someone withdraws their care, you start questioning your worth. But Machiavelli would say, never let someone else's behavior define your value, especially not someone who proved their inability to handle your presence with dignity. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't dramatize. You observe. You adjust. You move on. Because the moment you start romanticizing your own peace more than the chaos of others, everything changes. You start seeing through people not with bitterness but with clarity. You start noticing patterns. The way some only show up when they need something. The way others disappear when you need them. The way apologies come only when their benefits are threatened. And with that awareness comes detachment. Not the kind that makes you bitter, the kind that makes you smart. There's a difference between giving up and letting go. Giving up is emotional. It's loud. It's full of regret. But letting go is quiet. It's clear. It's deliberate. And Machiavellian indifference lives in that space. Because when you let go of needing to be understood, you become harder to manipulate. When you let go of needing to be liked, you become harder to shake. And when you let go of needing everything to be fair, you become untouchable. People will call you harsh for doing this, let them. People will say you've become cold. Good. Because I'm in a world that constantly tries to pull you into emotional traps. A little coldness is survival. And here's their old twist. When you stop caring the way you used to, you start caring the right way. You stop wasting energy on people who've shown you who they are. You stop feeding systems that are built on your self-doubt. You stop trying to win games that are rigged against you. Instead, you start caring about your time, your vision, your legacy. You begin to play long-term. And in the long game, detachment isn't a weakness. It's an edge. Machiavelli knew that those who can emotionally disengage are the ones who see the battlefield clearly. The ones who don't get seduced by every offer, who don't panic at every threat, who don't fall for every sweet word or sudden praise. They observe, they calculate, they wait, and most of all, they stay grounded in what they know to be true, regardless of the noise. This is how you win, not by being louder, not by being nicer, but by being unmoved. You don't argue with fools. You don't chase ghosts. You don't plead with the emotionally unavailable. You recognize the game and you stop playing. People can't manipulate someone who no longer craves their attention. They can't guilt someone who has nothing to prove. They can't push someone who knows exactly where they stand. And when you reach this level of internal clarity, you'll start noticing how much quieter life becomes. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. You've become unshakable. Because the things that used to pierce you now pass through like smoke. Imagine that. A life where someone else's mood doesn't dictate your day. Where rejection doesn't lead to self-destruction. Where success isn't defined by whether others clap for you or not. That's what detachment brings, not numbness, but sovereignty. And here's what nobody tells you. When you stop giving your emotional energy to people who never deserved it, you start attracting people who respect it. People who value your time, who don't play games, who don't need you to shrink for them to feel big. But none of that shows up until you master one thing, your ability to walk away. Not with anger, but with indifference. Because once you stop caring in the way the world conditioned you to care, once you claim your emotions from the hands of others, you become dangerous. Not to others, but to the systems that relied on your self-doubt to keep you obedient. And when that happens, you stop being easy to control. You stop being an option. You stop being their emotional safety net. You become a presence they have to respect. Not because you demanded it, but because you no longer need it. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It's not a light switch. It's a series of small choices, micro-decisions that at first feel like rebellion, like guilt, like you're doing something wrong. You'll say no to someone's manipulative request and feel a twinge in your stomach. You'll stay silent instead of defending yourself, and your body will scream to explain. You'll walk away from someone who doesn't respect you, and your mind will beg you to turn back. That's the detox. You're not just breaking habits. You're breaking identities, versions of yourself that were built entirely on care, on being needed, wanted, accepted. But you're not here to be digestible. You're not here to keep everyone else comfortable at the cost of your own center. You're here to walk through the world unbothered. Not because you don't feel, but because you've mastered your feelings. And when you master them, no one else can weaponize them against you. This is what Machiavelli meant when he spoke of appearing virtuous, but being ready to abandon virtue the moment it becomes a liability. It's not hypocrisy, it's adaptation. The ability to play roles without becoming those roles. Tougher empathy without becoming enslaved by it. To love without becoming dependent. People will test this. They always do. The moment you stop reacting, they'll escalate. They'll poke harder, speak louder, push deeper because your reaction was their reassurance, their proof that they could still reach you, that they still had access. So when you need them that access, don't expect applause. Expect resistance. They'll accuse you of being heartless. Let them. They'll claim you've changed. Smile because you have. They'll say you're selfish now, but what they mean is you're no longer available for their chaos. And to people who rely on chaos to feel powerful, your peace is threatening, so keep going. Watch how quickly the wrong people fall away when you stop feeding them your energy. When you stop being the one who always fixes, always reaches out, always softens first. Watch how the dynamic flips. Not because you fought harder, but because you stopped playing altogether. That's the Machiavellian lesson most people miss. You don't need to conquer people to control them. You just need to become indifferent to the outcomes they try to dangle in front of you. The job offer, the apology, the affection, the validation. If they know you need it, they will use it. Even if they don't realize they're doing it, oh, I'll die it. They'll sense it. People can smell emotional hunger. And the hungrier you are, the more games they'll play. So starve the game, not by withdrawing into bitterness, but by rising above the entire setup. By getting so grounded in your self-respect that nothing they give or withhold changes your state. That's real power. That's the kind of power that doesn't shout. It doesn't chase. It doesn't announce. It just is a quiet storm that cannot be moved because it no longer runs on the approval of the world. Imagine living like that. Someone insults you doesn't stick. Someone ghosts you doesn't shake you. Someone lies about you doesn't penetrate. You see it, you acknowledge it, but you don't become it. That's the skill. You become the observer, not the reactor. And that tiny shift changes everything. Suddenly, you're not being pulled into their world. You're watching it spin from a distance, choosing when and where to engage, if at all. Because once you stop caring about being liked, you can finally start being respected. And once you stop caring about being understood, you can start being free. People always ask, how do I get others to treat me better? The answer isn't in changing them. It's in changing what you tolerate. And you only stop tolerating nonsense when you stop needing the people who bring it. That's where detachment is born. From clarity. From seeing patterns for what they are, not what you hope they'll be. From noticing how someone's actions feel like love but taste like control. From recognizing that consistency isn't built on promises but on patterns. And when you see that, really see it, you don't beg for change. You remove yourself from the equation. Machiavelli would smile at that, not because it's cruel, but because it's strategic. Because emotional self-respect is the first step toward psychological dominance. And not dominance over others, but over the one opponent you've been battling all along. The version of you that cared too much about all the wrong things. That version of you that wanted closure instead of clarity. That defended yourself in conversations where silence was the real power move. That gave second chances like candy, hoping one day someone would finally realize your worth. But worth doesn't need to be realized. It needs to be owned by you. When you own it, something incredible happens. Your life starts to filter itself. People who can't handle your detachment leave. People who can't manipulate you disappear. People who needed your weakness to feel strong gone. And what remains? Stillness, clarity, peace. Not because everything is perfect, but because you no longer need it to be. You don't rise by fixing the world. You are rise by fixing your reactions to it. Machiavelli would call that the highest form of strategy. Not controlling others, but becoming so grounded that no one can control you. So start today. Notice where you flinch, where you chase, where you explain yourself too much. Those are the pressure points. Those are theft rings. And you are the one holding the scissors. Cut them. And once you do, watch how light you feel. Watch how quiet the noise becomes. And watch most of all how nothing and nobody can affect you ever again. Because when you stop caring in the way they trained you to care, when you stop attaching your peace to their chaos, their moods, their opinions, their love, you become something they can't touch. You become